morning, everybody. This crowd's got some energy in it. All right. Welcome to the third annual Presidio Auto Technology Summit here in Denver. It is wonderful to see this room so packed and filled with innovators, investors, founders, executives. Who is any one of those things? Raise your hand if you're any one of those things I just mentioned. It's the entire room, exactly. We're sold out today. Thank you for coming. We saved every single one of you a seat and not a person more. So we appreciate you being here. Thank you for making this all happen. Those of you who have been here before know why we are back. This is a place of innovation. This is the Denver Art Museum. 130 years ago, it was established. It is a hub for imagination and ideas. And today, it now is filled with 70,000 works of art from around the world. And it's really a canvas for what we're doing today, which is the combination of investing as well as technology. This is where innovation meets capital, and you're all a part of it. It's where critical content creates meaningful connections, and that's what we're going to do. Because right now, the industry, as you know, is moving faster than ever, and you're all a part of everything that's happening. And we're here to unpack all of that transformation in a packed program. We're going to start with our Drive-In Live. We're going to dive into a discussion on capital. We're going to talk to retailers. We're going to talk about Amazon. We're going to talk about AI. We're going to talk about Techion. It is a full, fast-paced day of insight, innovation, and conversation. To get us started, please join me in welcoming the mind behind this event, our CEO, Brody Cobb. Brody, come on up.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. All right. So, first of all, I always like to thank everybody for coming. We understand the demands on your time, and we've had people come from all over the country, maybe even from out of the country, and we really appreciate it. We are at Presidio completely infatuated with the auto industry and the entrepreneurs in it. Find them incredible, and we're appreciative of the capital, a lot of capital providers here who really build these businesses. And we felt like, we looked around a few years ago and felt like there really wasn't a conference that got them together in a really efficient and intentional way. So that's what we've tried to build here. We've been doing this is our third year, and kind of incredibly, we sold out, so we're very humbled by that. And the idea is to learn a little bit, but also have a chance to network. So we hope you enjoy the show today, and thank you so much for coming.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, Brody. We're kicking off today with a new in-person session for us, Drive-In Live, and welcome to the people who are online watching us live as well. On a quarterly basis, you may have seen that Drive-In Live is where we pull back the curtain on some of the biggest numbers and the most influential figures in the industry. It is a chance to go beyond the headlines of what's actually happening in the industry, get some hard facts, dealership performance. It's our first time with a studio audience, so that's kind of cool. It is powered by an exclusive partnership with NCM Associates. It gives us access to all the performance metrics representing more than 4,000 dealers nationwide. No one has broader or more timelier view of the industry than what you're going to hear right now. And we're going to use this opening session to really kind of set the tone for the rest of the day, because we know that the industry we're navigating through this landscape of pressure and resistance and reinvention. So the question is, where are we today? Where are we going to go in the future? And to help us unpack all of that, I am joined by somebody who brings clarity to the numbers. He is the insight in all the noise, and he's a guitar player too, so he knows a thing about making a lot of noise. Please welcome Kevin Tynan, Director of Research at the Presidio Group for Drive-In Live. Kevin. We saved you a seat.
Thank you.
Is that you on the guitar?
That was Hendrix, I think. It sounded like Hendrix.
All right, Kevin. So in addition to the folks in the room, I mentioned that we have an audience that joins us online. We have senior leaders there, decision makers, executives. We're going to go through the latest benchmark report. This is just out today, all right? And some of you, those of you who are in the room here, have it in a paper copy, and those online, this was released about an hour or two ago as well. But now we're going to understand actually what's happening, Kevin, in the EV landscape. We'll do a little window into the Chinese brands. We'll talk about vehicle affordability. We're going to spend 15 minutes talking about the data, and then we're going to move to your questions. We're going to move to the questions that are online, as well as in the room. And we really want this to be interactive. We have a lot of shy people in the room here. Find your inner you, okay? And then we have microphones that will be around the room. Please raise your hand when you have a question during that 15-minute Q&A session. We'll get somebody over to you, okay? Kevin, let's turn to the data now, the just released data. The average franchise dealership posted a 7% increase in net pre-tax profit compared with the third quarter of 2024. That was led by a robust gain for domestic brand stores that was countered by flat to down earnings for import as well as luxury brand stores. You see it reflected there. The results were affected by two unusual factors. Last year, the CDK global system outage that made for an outsized 2024 third quarter, and this year's expiration of the federal electric vehicle tax credits at the quarter's end. Gross profit fell across most departments, new, used, and fixed operations. That reflected lower volume, tighter per vehicle margins on the variable side. Average finance and insurance income per vehicle did rise, though. Average gross profit per new vehicle fell 15.7% from the year earlier quarter, dropping that metric below $2,000 for the first time since 2020. But there's good news. Even with those declines, the average dealership's overall earnings remained on an upswing, providing further validation that profitability is normalizing at a level well above those pre-pandemic levels. So through the first 9 months of 2025, the average store's profit was nearly double its level in 2019. That's according to the data that we have from NCM. So maybe it confirms, Kevin, how we labeled the industry last quarter when we did Drive-In Live, which was the era of a new profitability norm. What stands out to you in the NCM data, and why does it matter to the folks who are in the room here?
Yeah, look, I think the key point of what you just said and all the numbers is that gross was down, but profitability was up, which tells me, and I think this is going to be the theme going forward, is that dealerships, franchise dealerships dealing with the OEMs is going to be more and more difficult, right? Too much inventory, not pricing or margin integrity. Where it's happening is below the gross line, on the operating lines, right? So there's operating efficiencies, and that's kind of what this room is, right? This is where you're going to get your basis points of profit margin. It's not going to be because new vehicles, which again is just one of the businesses that the franchise dealers are involved in, it's not going to be because new vehicle margins suddenly explode like we saw during the pandemic period when supply and demand were really tight. In fact, that's going the other direction. Inventory's up, a little bit pressure on sales because of higher prices. So very important to find efficiencies in the operating lines. And I think that's what technology, software, valuation tools, that's what that's about. And I think that's going to be where the profitability comes from.
The average dealership's fixed operations gross profit for the third quarter declined 8.6% year over year. We expected more clarity on fixed ops performance in the third quarter. Of course, I mentioned the CDK issue. What do you see in those numbers?
Yeah, there's a couple things. CDK is one, and the expiration of the federal tax credit make me not put a lot of stock in the third quarter result. I think in the CDK thing was June of 24. And the way I think about it in my mind is like business got done in the second quarter in June, but on paper, and then got logged in the third quarter, you know, in the financial statements. So that comparison is difficult. The other thing I would say is that I think the pressure on the OEMs to move units at higher prices, excess inventory, takes up a lot of focus and attention of the dealerships. So while there are 4 businesses and new vehicle revenue may be 50%, on a gross profit basis, it's only 20%. So you're taking up a lot of attention from the franchise base away from fixed ops, away from used vehicles. And I think that's going to cycle back towards those ancillary businesses. And I think you're going to see less pressure on the franchise dealers from the OEMs.
A lot of people in this room and a lot of people online care about how domestics, luxury, import are doing. The domestic segment was the last to turn the corner on profitability following the luxury segment's rebound, which started in the fourth quarter of last year, import in the first quarter of 25. What are you seeing related to brand segments as a whole?
Yeah, and the way I think about that is I feel like the luxury segments, and back in the Wall Street days, we would call that smart money, feels or senses macroeconomic challenges earlier. And it's a contrarian group, right? So when the deals start happening, that's when those buyers are more involved. So it makes sense to me that the luxury segments are the first to turn in difficult macroeconomic conditions, and they're the first to jump on the sidelines as prices inflate and interest rates go higher and things like that. So it makes sense to me that luxury would lead in the fourth quarter, and then domestic would follow. Typically, you would think that the macroeconomic impact would be the largest on the import group. Those are just lower price points, different set of buyers, more move up and entry level buyers there.
Got it. Let's talk used. The used business has softened across the board, down 9.2%. What's happening there? Big drop from last quarter.
Yeah, again, I think that's so much focus on new coming down from the OEMs. The other thing is, and I've talked about this a lot, is that I feel like the used market is undersupplied, right? We didn't do a lot of leasing through the pandemic period. So when you think about a 3-year average lease term in the US, you have 20, 21, and 22, which comes back as used vehicles in, 22, 23, 24, and 25. So 2022 was a 13.8 million unit market, and we only did about 17% lease penetration. So the lowest lease return, and granted, it's a small part of the overall used vehicle segment. Right. 2025 is the lowest supply of used vehicles we've had it's 5 million average through 2022. It goes to 2.4 in 2025. And while it's a small part of the market, it drives all the prices higher, including private sellers. So now when you have CarMax or Carvana needing to buy inventory, they just bid it up. Every private seller sees those bids going up, right? Asking more. So not surprising that the used hasn't cycled back around, but I think that revenue and gross profit diversity is coming. It has to come because the new vehicle segment's getting more difficult.
Dealer expenses. So many in the room here are focused on helping dealers minimize their expenses in various ways. It's been a major topic this year. Personnel costs were essentially flat in the quarter, up 3.8% for the year. Advertising costs dipped 4%. We'll talk a lot about advertising with Fan Jin later today. That's 4% for the quarter, but up 2.5% year to date. Floor plan, it's been an area of notable relief for dealers, down 55% for the quarter, 40% for the year. What are you seeing in those numbers?
Yeah.
Dealership costs.
Right. And what I would look at there is what the dealers can actually control, right? Floor plan is difficult, right? That's gonna be a reflection of where interest rates are. Advertising you can control, personnel you can control, and I think that's where, again, this group of technology, software, AI will create basis points of margin. And it's not gonna be this, look, we're not going to see a tidal wave of margin come in. I think it's going to be incremental, but it can happen at a lot of different expense lines going forward. And the days of new vehicle inventory here today, gone late today, above MSRP are over. So you're going to have to find those places to control expenses.
All right, a lot of talk on EVs, obviously. A lot of regulatory changes since you and I sat last. BEV inventory declined by 41.6% during the quarter. That left dealerships with fewer than 100,000 units for the first time since February of 24. What are you seeing there? And how about average transaction prices now above $50,000 for the first time ever?
Yeah, well, the big drop in inventory is, dealers and manufacturers getting in position to be in position. I feel like, to an extent, anything we've said and talked about in terms of EVs for the past however many years just kind of went out the window at the end of September, right? And you just throw your typewriter on the floor and say, I don't know, we'll have to wait and see.
Typewriter. That's,
Yeah,
that's very techie.
And with my whiteout. And but I think it's really is a wait and see. The one thing I will say, that big drop in inventory puts them in position to not be choking on EV inventory. A couple interesting things. One of them, GM in the third quarter actually sold more battery electric vehicles than Ford did hybrids, which is interesting to me because it could be a change in strategy. The domestic manufacturers have moved up market, plus $50,000 average transaction price for all the domestic manufacturers. And it seems like GM has decided to use affordable EVs, and I say affordable as a replacement for the word unprofitable EVs, as an entry to maybe a new buyer, right? A new generation of buyer, the entry level or the move up buyer, knowing we're not going to be profitable in these vehicles, but we'll sell them because it gives us a base of a new customer going forward that hopefully we can move up through the product portfolio, which has been the opposite strategy that they've had. Basically, it's been, see us at $55,000. We don't want to know you below that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Record EV adoption, right? What do we think comes next with the effective EV investment and or pullback?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of talk about a loss of basically intellectual property,
Right.
A lot of talk of new vehicles that will not come for some time now, and a delay, right? That 7-year window maybe goes to 9 years,
right,
with some brands.
Right, and that's the thing is that again, that focus. So the focus was on EVs. The problem, as I see it, and this has me very concerned, for the manufacturers more than the retailers or the suppliers, is what's the next earnings catalyst? What's the next driver for the OEMs, right? The franchise dealers have different businesses. There's a lot of different ways to make money and wring out margin. For the OEMs, right, this is a 16 million unit market. And above that, we run into profit problems. So if you break that down monthly, it's 1.3 million, 1.33 million units a month. Anything over 2.6 million units of inventory is above 60 days, you start to run into margin problems. So if we're sealing that 16 million from a manufacturer's perspective, and then we're 84% truck and 16% car, that's been the earnings driver in my mind for the past 10 to 15 years. We're at 84%. There's not a lot of runway left. And now the next jump off was going to be, well, we can drive prices and margins higher with EVs because of the technology, because they're, robots build them in tents and it's magic. And it didn't happen. So now from an OE perspective, where do you go? And you haven't in that time invested in new technology and internal combustion. So I have great concern for what the next earnings driver is for the OEMs. The last one was supply chain disruption, and it wasn't really growth. It was just a reset of inventory back to 1 million units. So a little bit of concern, or a lot of bit of concern there.
Okay. We are going to open it up to questions that are coming in online as well as in the room. If you do have a question in the room, if you can at least raise your hand and we'll get somebody over to you with a microphone. I know there are a lot of questions that we have coming in. Let's go to the first one. It hits back on what you just said. Supply chain shortages for chips and raw materials are back in the news again. What will that mean for auto retail? Could it lead to the return of big inventory shortages? Yeah,
which when you look at the other side of that trade means better pricing and firmer margins, right? We called it a tariff pandemic because what the pandemic did was limit supply. And when supply and demand came in balance, you had an industry where the consumer paid over MSRP for every brand for a year, right? 2022 was the most profitable year for the franchise dealer base in history on a 13.8 million unit market. So you see chip shortages and it's like, oh, those darn chips, if we could only get more of them. But what it does on the other side of that is it firms up prices and margins. And again, that's not necessarily growth, organic growth, but it actually can benefit the franchise base, including the OEMs.
As a dealer, should I be worried about Chinese brands coming to the U.S.?
Not today, but eventually, yes. And I think as a dealer, you have to be less worried than if you were an automaker, right? I feel like on the OEM side, that could be a zero-sum game. Even if factories are built here and people are employed and intellectual property is shared and profits are reinvested, if the ceiling is 16 million, if China brands are going to take 2, 1, 4, 6 million, somebody has to give that up. The franchise base is a little bit different, right? Where obviously that hurts you if you own some of those brands that are losing share, but you have the ability to sell some of the Chinese brands. So maybe it's less Mitsubishi, more BYD, and the net of that. Plus, like I said, we're just talking about the new vehicle segment. You would get the benefits of parts and service for those brands as well, used vehicles for those brands as well. So the impact on the franchise dealer base is very different, and I don't know if I'd call it insulated, but very different than what the fear should be for the OEMs.
Especially with transaction prices that are so remarkably different.
Right.
Right.
Right. So that would be the opportunity for Chinese brands to slide in at affordable price points, which manufacturers, including the import brands, have run away from in this because you can't be profitable there.
Do you think we're at a new baseline for dealership profitability that can be sustained going forward?
I do think so. And I think as long as manufacturers are somewhat disciplined on inventory, right? If we go back to the days of 4 million units on the ground, but we're doing 1.3 million units a month, there goes all the pricing power margin, and it's pre-COVID all over again. But like I said, that on the gross profit side, new vehicle is 20%. That means 80 cents of every dollar a dealer makes is from some other business, of which you have a lot more control of your expenses, of how you run that business, of your efficiencies and your operating processes. And I think that's where it's going to come from for the dealers.
Question from the audience: how worried should we be about affordability? Do you think average transaction prices can and will keep going up?
Well, you don't have to be worried about affordability because it's not coming back. So don't worry about it. It's gone.
Okay.
Right. Think about it. Everything is inflationary. Everybody here thinks they'll make more money next year than they made last year. Nobody took less money this year. Multiply that by everybody who touches a car part, a tool, a computer, anywhere in the process, everything is inflationary. And even if there were some new technology that widened margins for OEMs, they're not passing them to the consumer. That's going to shareholders. That's going to their own employees or their executives. So the idea that we're going to get back to, we're a $50,000 market, according to Cox Automotive last month. The fact that we're never going back to 35 or 45, it's gone. The question is, how high can it go, and how do we get the consumer in vehicles that are profitable, right? Because that's the problem. Again, you say affordability, I say unprofitable.
I look out in the crowd and I see Marianne Johnson, who will be on stage later. I see our friend Rich Sands, and I see this question about tech innovation being an opportunity for efficiency and AI. What departments of the dealership do you think are most likely to benefit from some of those new technology tools and AI?
I don't think there are any that aren't ready to benefit from that. I think that's, it's one of the things when the consumer looks at the dealership and the reputation of the dealer and the thought of going to a dealer, the potential is huge. And I said this, I think Chuck is here. We had done a podcast a while ago, and it was really interesting. I spoke at the Virginia Auto Dealer Convention, and one of the tech guys got up and he talked about AI in terms of finding different price points based on down payment and the length of the term and the financial provider. And really, what was interesting was to be able to say to the consumer, not sit across the desk from them and have this sort of haggle war, but come around to my side of the desk and let's look at the numbers together. If we do this, here's your number. If we do that, here's your number. And I think just that process of it not being confrontational with the consumer is huge. So, and then you can just blame it on the computer. Like, I just put the numbers in. That's what it told me. and I think it's huge, and I think that's a huge difference for the consumer to say, like, I don't hate going there. You're actually on my side helping me do this process that's very important in my life. And I don't think there's anywhere that in a dealership, probably in any business or industry right now, that won't benefit from that.
Just a couple more. And again, if you have a question in the audience, raise your hand and we can get to you. When we talk about fourth quarter, where are volumes going to hit? Industry sales are pretty strong at year end, but we've seen surprising strong sales already this year with tariff and EV pushes. So where are we?
My volume estimate is always the same, all of them. Everything that gets built will be sold.
It's just a degree of
it's the degree of what is the pricing, right, and the incentive environment and the discount environment look like. I will say, by comparison, the seasonally adjusted rates in October, November, December were 16, 16.5, and 16.8, and I don't think we're getting there. Okay. I don't think we're topping those this year. So, by the headline number, is that a disappointment? Probably, but by a pricing and margin perspective, it's probably okay.
Finally, what is the biggest question or worry that dealers are asking you about these days?
Dealers are concerned about direct sales, and I've been at a lot of the state conventions. They talk about direct sales a lot. Big concern. China, not as much, and then sort of like hourly rates in the service bays, right? Getting on warranty work. Warranty work is a big question for the dealers right now. So it's sort of those ancillary businesses behind the scenes or below the gross line that, it's not the big picture stuff. What is my OEM doing with EVs or not EVs? It's really more, that your own kitchen. How am I running my house here with some of these factors going forward? But again, the impact on the manufacturer much more dire than it is on the dealers, I think.
And I always hear from dealers about technology. What technology should I use?
Yeah,
how can it plug and play with what I already have?
Yeah, and there's a lot, right? There's a lot of drinking from the fire hose, and dealers get concerned about that there are so many good choices, and then you have systems that need to speak to each other and work effectively or work at all in a lot of cases. So yeah, but that's something that will and has to be figured out, and that's business as usual.
Cutting through the noise, as always. Thank you, Kevin Tynan. Thank you very much.
Thanks, bud.